Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. She didn't even say goodbye, just the click of the door and the faint smell of her perfume trailing behind like a ghost that still thought it lived here. I was in the kitchen, standing over a pot of mac and cheese I wasn't hungry for when my phone buzzed. Friend needed company. Be home soon. No name, no details. Just that. I didn't blink, didn't breathe. I just tapped out 5 words that didn't need punctuation. Sure, say hi to Chris. And then I set my phone down. Not because I was okay, but because I was tired of pretending I didn't already know. The thing is, I'm not dramatic. I don't slam doors. I don't break dishes. I don't write Reddit posts unless something inside me is already splintered. My name's Marvin, and I'm not what you'd call bold. I organize our spice rack alphabetically. I wear socks to bed. I said, I love you first, and waited 3 days for her to say it back. But even I knew Chris wasn't just a name. He was the name. The one that sat too long in her stories. The one she barely mentioned but smiled after. The one I found saved under Carla books in her phone months ago. She thought I didn't notice. And I didn't. Not really. Not until she stopped asking if I wanted anything when she made coffee. Not until she started getting home later and laughing in the shower like someone had texted something just for her. I thought maybe it was just my insecurity. Maybe I was being clingy again. Maybe she really was helping a friend. But the moment I typed his name and saw the read receipt, my stomach twisted. I didn't hear back. What I did hear was silence, and then a call, then another, and another. 12 missed calls, 0 voicemails. The kind of panic that doesn't come from being late, but from being caught. I didn't answer. I just sat on the couch, gripping a pillow like it owed me answers. At 9:14 p.m., the doorknob rattled. Then it turned slowly, like guilt had taken the wheel. She walked in, winded, pale, her jacket still on like she couldn't decide if she was coming or going. "Marv," she said, barely audible. I didn't speak. I just pointed to the hallway, because there, pinned neatly to the wall where her vision board used to hang, was a printout of her location history from the past 3 Thursdays. I'd requested the data from our shared cloud account that she forgot I still had access to. The addresses matched a cheap motel outside town, each one down to the minute, and just under that, a selfie. Not one she sent me. One I'd found on a burner account Chris had used to comment on a photo of her at the gym. She was wearing the same hoodie she said she'd left at work. She blinked like a deer in headlights, the kind that knows the road ends here. I stood up. My voice didn't even shake. "I didn't need proof," I said. "I just needed you to admit it." Her lips parted, but nothing came out, because for once she didn't have a script ready. Fiona stood there like time had frozen her. I'd never seen her speechless. This was the woman who always had a comeback, always had a polished reason tucked in her purse next to the lip gloss she thought I didn't notice cost $50. But now her mouth opened once, closed, then stayed shut. The air between us felt like broken glass, impossible to breathe without bleeding. I didn't yell. I didn't ask her to explain anything. I think that's what shook her most. I just turned and walked into the kitchen, poured myself the same flat soda I'd opened hours earlier, and took a sip, like it wasn't laced with heartbreak. From the corner of my eye, I could see her trembling, still clutching her purse like it held her dignity. She finally stepped in, closed the door behind her, and whispered, "You don't understand. It wasn't like that." I laughed. I actually laughed. And I hate that I did because it wasn't funny. Nothing about this was funny. But something cracked inside me the moment she said that line, like she was reciting it from a bad script. "You're right," I said, my voice low. "I don't understand. Please enlighten me. How is it exactly?" She stepped forward, her heels making that sharp sound on the hardwood I used to love. Now it just made me nauseous. "I went to see Haley, but Chris was there too." I raised a hand. "Stop. If you're going to lie, at least upgrade the material. Friend needed company doesn't turn into impromptu motel reunion." Her face fell. She looked like someone who realized too late that the fire she'd been playing with wasn't pretend. It was real, and it was already burning the house down. She walked over to the printouts taped on the wall, yanked them down like that would erase them from existence, and turned to me, finally raising her voice. "You went through my data, my privacy." That, that was her defense. I nodded slowly. "Yes, Fiona, I went through your data, not your soul. You gave that to someone else weeks ago." She paused like she wanted to hit me with another excuse, but her eyes said she'd already lost, and she knew it. I walked past her down the hallway into our bedroom, no, my bedroom now, and grabbed the small overnight bag I'd packed 2 days ago. I don't know why I packed it. Something in me just knew. I zipped it shut, calm, almost mechanical. She followed me, standing at the doorway like a lost child. "You're leaving." I didn't even look at her. "No, Fiona, I left the moment I sent that text. This is just me catching up." She broke. I mean, really broke. Tears, gasps, the whole messy show. She fell to her knees right there on the bedroom floor. Maybe for the first time she realized I wasn't bluffing, that the quiet husband she always assumed would tolerate anything wasn't playing along anymore. I stepped past her, grabbed my keys, and paused at the door. "You know what the worst part is," I said. "I was starting to believe you again. Stupid, right?" I stared at my phone, scrolling through photos. Our wedding day, that blurry one from our first camping trip, the one where we burned the marshmallows but still smiled, and then the one I almost deleted, her on the porch with her hand on my shoulder but her eyes looking at something off camera. I zoomed in. Her eyes were glowing, not from me, probably not even from the moment, just from whatever secret made her feel powerful enough to think I'd always stay. I didn't cry. I thought I might. But I was past that now. I wasn't interested in being the broken husband who begged for explanations. I wasn't going to scream into the void or smash picture frames. I'd been quiet too long. But this silence, this one I could use. That morning I sent Fiona one message, just one. "Don't call, don't text, I'll be in touch." She replied instantly. "Please, can we talk? I'm so sorry." I didn't answer. I had no intention of talking. Not yet. First, I needed a plan. Not for revenge, not to hurt her back. That's not me. But if I was going to walk away from a marriage where I gave everything, I was going to make sure she saw exactly what she lost and exactly who she'd turned into. And then she sent something that changed everything. A photo. One I wasn't supposed to see. It popped up while I was staring blankly at Leonard's ceiling, trying to piece together where everything went so wrong. Her name flashing on my screen again, something I had already grown numb to. But this time there was no text, just an image file, no caption, no apology, just a photo with a timestamp from 2 nights ago. 11:42 p.m. That was supposed to be the night she told me she had fallen asleep at Haley's after too much wine. I tapped on it. It was taken in a hotel mirror. She was wearing the same black hoodie she always kept in the backseat of her car, the one I once thought she wore to the gym. But this wasn't the gym. She was holding her phone in one hand, the other around someone's waist. A man's hand was resting on her hip. Only the lower half of his face was visible in the mirror, but I recognized the beard. I'd seen it in tagged photos from one of her office group shots last year. Chris. It wasn't a selfie she meant to send. Maybe she had meant to delete it and tap the wrong button. Maybe she wanted to break me down even more. Or maybe, deep down, she wanted to be caught, not just exposed, but ruined. Either way, she got what she wanted. I stared at that photo for what felt like forever. Not because of what she was doing, but because of how comfortable she looked. Relaxed, like nothing about that moment was wrong. Like she hadn't just stabbed 9 years of marriage in the back and posed for the evidence. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't want to, but because no words would have matched the depth of disgust rising in my throat. Instead, I locked my phone, tossed it face down on the coffee table, and finally let myself fall apart. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, the way I always did everything. A soft exhale, a tear I didn't wipe, a breath that refused to steady. The next morning, I took a screenshot of the photo, printed it at a pharmacy kiosk, and slid it into an envelope. Then I drove back home, not to talk, not to fight, but to return the silence she'd gifted me for months with interest. I left the envelope on the kitchen counter right next to her half-finished cup of almond milk latte, the one she always reheated instead of drinking fresh. I wrote nothing on the outside, no note, no dramatic message, just the picture, sealed and waiting. Before I walked out, I took one last look at the home we built, or rather the shell of it. It didn't feel like home anymore, just drywall and echoes. As I opened the front door, I heard footsteps on the stairs. "Marv, are you here?" Her voice sounded nervous, not because she missed me, but because she sensed something had shifted. I didn't answer. I didn't even turn around. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me, and for the first time in weeks, the air didn't feel suffocating. I sat in my car and waited. 3 minutes later, the front door swung open. She stood there in a robe, envelope in hand, her face pale, as if she'd seen a ghost. And maybe she had. Because the version of me who tolerated everything, he didn't live here anymore. She didn't answer, because for once the silence belonged to her. The motel parking lot was still fresh in my mind. Even as I drove away from the house, the location logs hadn't just shown addresses, they showed timestamps. Every Thursday night for 3 weeks straight, Fiona was there. Same time, same place, same man. And while she was wrapped in lies, I was at home reheating leftovers and asking if she wanted almond milk or oat milk in her coffee the next day. Like an idiot. I didn't know where I was driving. I just knew I couldn't stay. My hands gripped the steering wheel tight enough to make my knuckles ache. My heart wasn't racing. It was disappointed. That's the only way I can describe it. Like something inside me had just deflated, slow and painful. About 20 minutes later, I found myself parked at a gas station on Route 8. I just sat there in the car, headlights off, engine running. I watched people come and go, a young couple laughing over sodas, a guy trying to fix his windshield wipers, life going on for everyone but me. Meanwhile, my world had just folded in half. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just sat there, breathing through the quiet. That's the part no one tells you about betrayal. It doesn't always hit like thunder. Sometimes it seeps in like smoke, choking you slowly, quietly when no one's around to see you suffocate. Eventually, I drove back. I wasn't ready to talk. I wasn't ready to argue. I just needed my laptop, my work bag, and the charger she always steals and forgets to return. That's it. I just needed out. When I walked in, the house was dark. No sobbing sounds, no begging, just nothing, except one thing. On the kitchen counter, there was a sticky note, her handwriting crooked like she was shaking when she wrote it. It said, "I messed up. Please talk to me. I'm not ready to lose you." And beneath the note, her phone, unlocked, screen glowing, a message thread still open. Chris again. This time, no emojis, just, "He found out." I think it's over. No panic, no regret, just a statement. She hadn't deleted anything. Maybe it was guilt, maybe it was carelessness, or maybe, just maybe, she thought I'd read it and pity her. But I didn't. I picked up the phone, stared at the message, and for the first time in my life, replied to someone pretending to be me. It is. Then I placed the phone back down exactly how I found it. I took my things slowly. I didn't rush. I didn't slam drawers. I didn't check if she was still there, because in every way that mattered, she wasn't. As I closed the door behind me, I realized something strange. I wasn't broken. I wasn't shattered. I was just empty. And for now, that felt like enough. I didn't go to a hotel that night. I drove to my cousin Leonard's place, the one guy who never asks questions, only opens doors. He handed me a blanket, pointed to the couch, and left a cold bottle of root beer on the coffee table. That was his way of saying, "I've got you. No lectures, no judgment, just space." The couch wasn't comfortable, but I didn't need comfort. I needed distance, space to think, or maybe space not to think. But my mind refused to cooperate. I lay there with my eyes open for hours, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow, creaky circles above me. Every time it turned, I imagined Fiona's voice saying, "It's not what you think." But it was. And worse, around 3 a.m., my phone lit up again. I'd muted her earlier, but this one came from an unknown number. I hesitated, then opened it. "Heard what happened. You okay?" No name, just that. My heart pounded. I replied cautiously, "Who is this?" Two dots appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared. "It's Macy. I work with Fiona. I shouldn't be texting you, but I thought you deserved to know everything." I sat upright. Macy, I'd met her maybe twice. She seemed nice, quiet. Fiona once called her a little too nosy. I guess now I understood why. I replied again. "Know what exactly?" This time she sent a voice memo. I hesitated, then pressed play. Her voice came through shaky. "She's been seeing Chris for months. Everyone at work knows. They didn't even try to hide it anymore. She said she'd tell you eventually, but she joked that you'd never leave, that you'd forgive anything. I'm sorry, Marv. I know this is awful, but I just couldn't stay quiet anymore." I replayed it 3 times. Each time her words hit harder. She joked I'd never leave, like I was a joke, like my loyalty was a punchline to her late-night comedy set. Suddenly, the hurt turned into something else, not rage, but resolve. I stayed away longer than planned. What was supposed to be a night on Leonard's couch turned into 3. He didn't ask questions, just kept tossing me spare keys and refilling the coffee pot before I could reach for it. I wasn't sleeping well, and my head was still tangled in all the what-ifs I used to cling to. But every morning it got a little quieter in my chest, that ache of wanting to believe her. It wasn't gone, just quieter. On the 4th day, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring. Then it rang again an hour later, and again. Finally, I answered. It was my neighbor, Beth. She sounded nervous, like she'd rehearsed what she was going to say. "Marvin, I don't want to get in the middle of anything, but Fiona's been showing up. She knocked 3 times yesterday and again this morning. She's crying outside. I didn't know what to do." I thanked her, told her not to worry, and hung up. I wasn't angry at Fiona for knocking. I wasn't even surprised. What surprised me was how much I didn't want to see her. There was a time I'd have sprinted home if she sounded upset, but that part of me had already packed up and left. Still, I went back, not to talk, just to gather the rest of my things and look her in the eyes one last time, to see if anything real was left behind the performance. When I pulled up, she was sitting on the front steps in a hoodie 2 sizes too big, one I used to wear on rainy Sundays. Her hair was a mess, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked smaller, like she'd shrunk without the lies to hold her up. She stood when she saw me, eyes wide with hope. "Marv, can we talk, please?" I walked past her without a word. Inside, everything looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. The air was different now, hollow. She followed me in, hands trembling. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this. Chris was he wasn't even supposed to matter." I kept packing, calm, focused. I didn't give her the scene she wanted. She needed me to cry or scream or beg her to stay, something to prove she still had power. But I gave her nothing, just silence. "I ended it," she said suddenly. "With him. The second you found out, I ended it. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" I zipped the last of my bag, then finally looked up. "Why did you only end it when I found out?" I asked. "If it meant nothing, why did it last for months?" She had no answer, just tears. I didn't flinch. I walked past her, reached the door, and paused. She was behind me, barely whispering now. "Do you still love me?" I didn't turn around. "I don't know who you are anymore," I said. "But the person I loved, she wouldn't have done this." Then I left. She didn't follow. I drove off without checking the mirror. That chapter was closed, or at least I thought it was, until 2 days later when I got an email from HR at her job. Not meant for me, but forwarded accidentally. And what I read in that email changed everything I thought I knew about why she betrayed me. 2 days after I walked out for good, my inbox lit up with an email that wasn't supposed to be mine. The subject line read, "Re-HR policy breach, confidential." The sender was someone from Fiona's company. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I wasn't on any chain with her job, and we didn't share professional contacts. But then I saw the message had been forwarded by accident from her personal email, which I was still connected to through a shared folder we'd used to plan our anniversary trip last year. She'd never unlinked it. Curiosity beat hesitation. I opened it. The email was from the HR director to Fiona's manager. It detailed an internal complaint filed against Fiona and another employee. One line punched me in the gut. Several staff have reported inappropriate conduct between Fiona W. and Chris T., including displays of affection in common areas and misuse of company resources. So it wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just a mistake that bled out of control. It was a workplace scandal. She wasn't just betraying me behind closed doors. She was dragging her career down with it, all while laughing behind my back and assuming I'd never notice. I scrolled further. There were transcripts of interviews. One employee mentioned seeing them sneak out of the office building together through the back exit on lunch breaks. Another reported hearing Fiona say, "If Marv ever finds out, I'll say Chris is just someone helping me cope with work stress." Reading that made me feel sick. Not because it was shocking. I think I'd already accepted the worst. But because she was rehearsing lies about me in public to protect her reputation while framing me as the fragile husband too weak to handle stress. And I'd been the one walking on eggshells for months, asking her if she was okay. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and let the weight of everything sink in. This wasn't just about marriage anymore. This was about character, or the lack of it. And what chilled me the most? She never once mentioned any of this in our last conversation. Not the investigation, not the complaints, not even the possibility of losing her job. She still acted like I was the biggest threat in her life, but she was wrong. Later that evening, I got a call from her number again. I didn't pick up, but this time she left a voicemail. Through shallow breaths and barely held back sobs, she said, "Marvin, please, I need your help. They're suspending me. Chris says he doesn't want to be involved anymore. I don't know what to do." I played it twice, and both times I didn't feel pity. I felt clarity. For months, she made me feel small. She chipped away at my self-worth while building her fantasy on someone else's time and trust. And now that everything was crumbling, I was her fallback. But I wasn't that man anymore. I opened my phone, scrolled to her contact, and hit block. Not out of spite, not for revenge, but because I finally realized she wasn't confused, she was calculated, and I was done being part of the plan. The day I blocked Fiona's number, I expected to feel hollow, like I had just shut the last door of a house I used to call home. But instead, I felt something else. Peace. Not the loud kind with fireworks or applause, the quiet kind that hums when you finally stop waiting for someone to change. I moved my things into a small apartment a few blocks from Leonard's. Nothing fancy, just enough space for me and the version of myself that had been buried under years of compromises and second chances. I unpacked slowly, built furniture on my own, made coffee the way I like it, and for once I didn't feel like I was trying to prove anything to anyone. I was just living. The email from her work turned into more than a suspension. 2 weeks later, Leonard texted me a link. Local news, internal ethics investigation. Fiona and Chris both terminated. Apparently, he was married too, with a baby on the way. And just like that, her illusion crumbled. She had traded 9 years of stability for 2 months of sneaking around, and now both parts of her life were in ruins. She tried reaching out again through her sister, said she wanted to meet for closure, said she needed to explain. But I didn't respond. I didn't need an explanation. I already had it. The moment she chose to protect the lie instead of the person who would have forgiven her, that was her choice. And now this was mine. A few days ago, I ran into Beth, our neighbor. She gave me a small envelope Fiona had left with her, just in case. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity wins sometimes. Inside was a photo of us on our first vacation. blurry, beachy, smiling. On the back, she'd written, "You were always better to me than I ever deserved." She was right, but I wasn't angry anymore. Now I'm rebuilding. I signed up for a weekend class on woodworking. I started jogging again, even if I still hate mornings. I see my friends more. I talk to my mom without lying about how great things are. And I sleep, really sleep, without checking my phone at 3 a.m. hoping she came home. So if you're listening and you've been that quiet one in the relationship, the one always forgiving, always shrinking yourself just to keep peace, I hope you remember, peace shouldn't cost you your dignity. And me? I'm not bitter, I'm grateful. Because sometimes losing someone who never truly saw you is the best way to finally see yourself. Have you ever had a moment where you chose peace over pain like Marvin did? Share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear it. Thanks for watching Reddit Confessions. If this story hit close to home, hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more. Your truth matters.